watching the Rams offense versus what could be the best secondary in football right now. Quinyon Mitchell surging as Defensive Rookie of the Year since the bye week in Week 6. This defense has given up 2 touchdown passes and 9 explosive passes over 20 yards. This unit is playing absolutely spectacular, but they haven't seen a pass game that is diverse and complete as this one with the Los Angeles Rams. Matthew Stafford, Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, massive challenge for Sunday Night Football.
Could be a playoff preview. J-Mac, we got the Packers and the Niners. What are you watching for?
The running back position ain't dead. Josh Jacobs handing the ball off and letting him run through the middle of that 49ers defense. He's averaging 5.8 yards a carry when he's running in between those tackles. I think he's going to get the ball early and often. Can the 49ers get him on the ground?
And then, Harry, the weekend starts tonight. The Steelers and the Browns is a divisional showdown. What are you watching for tonight?
Russell Wilson, and can he be better in the red zone? Right now, he's 7 for 18 in the red zone, 39%. Also, facing this Cleveland Browns defense, I've seen some of the things that Taysom Hill was able to do against them last week. Can Arthur Smith and also Mike Tomlin have a nice package for who? Justin Fields, y'all.
Well, that'd be interesting. Fields came in for the one play last week and slid early in a moment that could wind up costing them. But let's get into that for a moment here, because here's how I viewed last weekend's game against the Ravens. I'll be honest. I thought the Ravens were going to prove to everyone that they, Baltimore, was a legit contender, and Pittsburgh had just been a great story, but it was going to start dwindling. Obviously, the opposite of that happened. Harry brings up the red zone offense for the Steelers. The offense in general, Dan, is it good enough for this team to make the Super Bowl?
No, not unless they fix their red zone issues. Right now, statistically, Russell's the worst red zone quarterback in football. His QBR is 8. That's out of 100. You're not going to win a Super Bowl playing that poorly in the red zone. And it's a little bit because everyone's understanding, okay, you're going to try to throw those jump balls to George Pickens. And if you look at the difference of these guys, this is where the quarterback change hasn't hit. It has hit in places, and we've talked about that. And this is where there's been the lack of the athleticism, the playmaking, the going and using your legs to go create. And defensive has started to say, okay, George Pickens, we're going to play off of you, and then Russell, we're not going to give you as many of those easy, essentially, those moon balls or those one-on-one throws. We're going to try to cover down and force Russell to hold the football and see if he can create, and he's not that creative player of old. I don't think it necessarily shows itself tonight, but I don't believe that this team is capable of winning a Super Bowl with an offense in the red zone as poor as the one that it is right now.
That's where we are, J-Mac. I would not have believed that we'd be having this conversation, but if they win tonight, a game in which they are fairly significantly favored, they're going to be 9-2. Are the Steelers a Super Bowl contender?
Absolutely. And I look at Dan's point, and he's making a great point, the red zone struggles. But we're in week 12 of the season. That's not to say that Russ hasn't played a ton of football as the quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Dan just talked about this. Earlier in the season, they were getting some man-to-man coverage when Russ first got in there. He found ways to get guys open. And we showed this one in the Baltimore Ravens game. They go cover 2. He should be checking his ball down to Najee Harris when he sees that. All right, good go right to him. Russ holds on to the ball, trying to make something happen, forced to throw the ball away. But I look at what you just talked about. They have to figure out ways to run through the red zone, not putting it all on Russ to have to create to do something. But I do feel like this defense and what they've been able to do, the Steelers scored 62 points off of turnovers. Their opponents in those games, 0. So we're talking about how good this defense is and what they can do for them. Yes, have to score in the red zone, but I think they have a shot.
So I agree with J-Mac. I do deem this team as a Super Bowl contender, number one, because of the way their defense plays. And you look at particularly last week what that linebacking group was able to do. Nick Herbert coming into the game in place of Alex Highsmith, making a difference, forcing a fumble. You look at Peyton Wilson. When Russell Wilson had that interception in the red zone, that defense had his back. And then we all know about, what T.J. Watt brings to the table as well as an outside linebacker. But for this team, they're top 10 in rushing, right? And for Russell Wilson, he is a guy that if he can make 5 to 6 throws a game, right? And we seen one of them last week on the hitch and go to George Pickens. He was able to catch that on a double move. We see the seam balls to Darnell Washington. If you can find a way to be better in the red zone, why can't this team be a Super Bowl?
Yeah, okay, so yes, if you can find a way to be better in the red zone.
Every team has something.
But what, well, not scoring touchdowns for some, but what do we think is going to be this drastic flip of they're going to be better in the red zone? Guys, for us to sit here and to think that they're going to beat Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson kicking field goals is a joke.
Pause right there. Hold on. I'll pause right there and I'll push back. What is one of the deficiencies of the Kansas City Chiefs offense.
Their
Has it
left
not been-
tackle.
But has it not been the red zone too this season?
No, it hasn't been bad. Ever since they got Hop, it's gotten a lot better. Ever since they got Hop, it's massively improved. They're not going to beat those teams. We
They
can't.
were 1 for 4 in the red zone versus Denver.
They
No
just beat
one-
the Ravens Sunday.
The
Dan. I
Ravens
watched
beat the
game.
Ravens.
Without scoring a touchdown.
The Ravens beat the Ravens. The Ravens had 12 penalties. They had 3 turnovers. Their kicker was 1 for 3 from field goals. They're not going to play that style of game every week. The Ravens, I'm not discrediting Pittsburgh. Yes, their defense was awesome. I'll tip my hat to them. Do we expect the Ravens to play that poorly again? No, of
They
course
tend
not.
to against the
they have this
Steelers,
season.
though, right? I mean, the Steelers do that to people. Let me get Shefty in here.
Well,
how about the Steelers here?
I would also say this. Russell Wilson's only started a few games with this team. Didn't practice and train. How about it takes a little bit of time to get up to speed, to
Yes.
catch on, to get out? No?
I mean, Russell's played for a decade in the NFL as well. I mean,
Yeah.
we're almost in December, so yes, they are kind of who they are in the red zone right now. I
But
think.
by the way, they can win playing football the way they are. They can do that.
Okay, no question, Shefty. They can win, absolutely. Can they beat Buffalo? Can they beat Kansas City? Can they beat Lamar and the Ravens
I just
when
feel like
they're
we
playing their best?
Keep saying
Well,
that about them. They were going into the Commanders game. It's like, all right, to your point, they've been a feel-good story. Russ is coming there. He's turning it around. But can they beat the Commanders? They do that. Then they go against the Baltimore Ravens. You just said we fully expected the Ravens to take care of business. In a sin, they beat the Ravens. It's just every time it's something that they have
find
to do.
a way.
They continue to find a way.
Here's the degree to which what Dan is bringing up is actually a bigger question. Okay, Cindy, can we put up A23? Because this is, I think, a referendum on what the NFL is now and whether they can buck this trend. A23 is the one I'm looking for. Here it is. These are the last 5 Super Bowl winners. That's where they ranked in offense in the season in which they won the Super Bowl. The Chiefs of last year are the only one that was not in the top 7 in offense in the league. And as you see, they were second in opponents' point per game. Asking is, in 2024, with the game played the way it is and the rules the way they are, can a team that is primarily built on defense win a championship?
Oh, I believe they can, yes. It's not 2019 where there was no shot of that happening. I absolutely, because this is cyclical in many ways. The run game's become significantly more important than it was 8-10 years ago. The ability to play the run and stop the run, get turnovers, play great defense. So complementary football is back in the NFL, so there's no question they can. But you're also, Greeny, I mean, Hembo sent me this today, okay? In the last 20 Super Bowls, the last 20, that means 40 Super Bowl participants, only 3 of them are worse in the red zone than the Steelers are right now. The 2006 Bears, the 2010 Steelers actually, and then the 2015 Broncos. I'm not saying they can't do it. If they're going to do it, they better fix what they're doing in the red zone immediately, or they're not going to beat Josh and Patrick and Lamar. They're not.
I'm just looking at those teams. I mean, if you think about them, those are some of the great defenses that we've seen in recent memory, including the 2015 Broncos. That's the Peyton Manning team, right? That won with Von Miller in the Super Bowl. Go ahead, Jeff.
And this is what the Steelers have done. They did it in 2010.
Right.
And if they get one more win this season, it will mark the 17th straight season that Mike Tomlin hasn't finished under 500. They have a formula and a recipe that they use.
I got a lot of
it
appreciation,
works.
love, and respect for it. I don't believe that formula beats one of the greatest quarterbacks ever in a win or go home game, or a guy that likely should win the MVP this year, or a guy that's a 2-time MVP. I don't believe that's the case.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, they're going to have to get through Mahomes or Allen or Lamar or some combination of those. We're going to find out. They did it kicking field goals the other day. The rest of the league is 2-19 in games in which they don't score a touchdown. The Steelers are 2-0. Somehow they find a way. Let's play contender kryptonite with some of the AFC contenders. They all seem to have a flaw. Let's see if it's fatal. Dan, what is Buffalo's kryptonite?
If you get into big body personnel and run the football at them, no defense in the NFL plays in less base, meaning multiple linebackers or 3 linebackers on the field, more than Buffalo. Now, they're fantastic at it, and Taron Johnson, the guy that plays at that nickel spot, is as good a nickel run defender that we have in the NFL. But I do believe if teams are able to put multiple tight ends on the field, an extra offensive lineman on the field, and really control the game and run right at them, that could keep them on the field, and that could be their flaw.
Harry, let's talk about the champs. What is Kansas City's kryptonite?
Well, they have 2 of them, in my opinion. The first one, being able to protect Patrick Mahomes. In the last 3 games, this offensive line has given up 10 sacks. I call that game versus the Buffalo Bills. It was the pressure, it was the sacks, the inability for the offensive line to be able to hold up. Now, what also coexists with that is the simple fact that the wide receivers cannot get separation. The Buffalo Bills said, we're going to line up and play man coverage because we don't believe that your guys can win one-on-one from a route running perspective. And that's what happened, and the Buffalo Bills won the game.
We got to dive more into that. Meanwhile, J-Mac, we've talked about Baltimore. What is the Ravens' kryptonite?
Well, if the Chiefs can't get separation, all they have to do is play against the Baltimore Ravens in this secondary because they're giving separation to everybody. That pass defense has struggled no matter who they've played against. 87 completions of 15 or more yards. That's 40 more than the next team behind them. They have to figure out a way. Tre'Davious White played more in that Steelers game. Could he be the answer? Looked pretty good. We shall see.
So J-Mac, there's so much to this. And I said it already. I thought the Ravens were going to establish themselves Sunday as clearly the team in their division and clearly a Super Bowl contender. And then the Steelers go out and do what they did. And it really sort of threw my mind into a bit of it made me rethink the entire situation. And now they're playing the Chargers on Monday night. You gave me 2 words for that game for Baltimore. Harry, what are they?
Must win. They cannot afford to lose this football game. When you look at the Baltimore Ravens and their schedule that they have coming up, they play the Eagles after the Chargers. They then still have to play the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Houston Texans, and then they have the Browns the last game of the year. Now, a lot of people are saying, well, they play the Browns, 73% chance to win. Well, they lost to the Browns once already. So when you look at this schedule, it's a must-win, in my opinion, for Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens.
So how do you, J-Mac, explain it? You're a defender. Last year, Baltimore's defense was elite. I know they lost a few pieces, and maybe the most important of them is the coordinator, Mike McDonald, who's now coaching in Seattle. But to go from where they were to that disparity, how do you explain why this defense has been so bad?
It just looks the lack of ability to understand what they're trying to accomplish in whatever defense they're running. When they play zone, it's not just the secondary. The linebackers are out of position. And man-to-man, it looks like to a point they've lost some confidence out there where you're seeing guys that are giving up plays that they should be making. So as you look at this Ravens defense, you don't typically see where they're the top of the league in stopping the run. But as soon as a team decides to throw the ball, they have no answers for it. And I talked about Tre'Davious White. He played well when he went in for Brandon Stevens. I don't know if he's the answer for them, but
Is it correctable and improvable over time?
So for the past few weeks, I've been saying absolutely, you can correct this thing. And week after week, it still is an issue. So at this point, I don't believe that it's correctable. It's going to be more Lamar Jackson in the offense having to have it figured out.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the identity of that offense. Dan, you've been watching, now you told me you've been seeing some of the debates that we've been having here. There's been a lot of where is Derrick Henry, why in all the games they lose does he have no touches? No touches in the fourth quarter this week, on the bench for the 2-point conversion. What is the identity of that offense and what should it be, and do they have a Derrick Henry problem?
The identity of the offense is they're capable of doing whatever they want, whenever they want. And they have multiple personnel to do it. They can put multiple tight ends on the field and run it and throw it. They can put Patrick Ricard on the field, run it and throw it. They have an unbelievable play-action pass game, and Derrick Henry could run it in the first quarter. He can close it out in the fourth quarter. I think way too much was being made of this past weekend and Derrick Henry not getting touches. To Pittsburgh specifically, Pittsburgh puts a bunch of people down at the ball, and they dared Lamar and Baltimore to beat them throwing the football. They did not think that Lamar and Baltimore could do it, and to their credit, Lamar in the pass game struggled. But you're not just going to pound your head into the wall going, here, we're just going to keep running the football on a consistent basis when they have an extra body down there. So the Ravens offense, I don't think you have to change anything. You played poorly. Credit Pittsburgh. They played well. This isn't, oh my gosh, we got to figure things out. Reset, massive challenge, massive challenge on Monday Night Football versus another elite defense. I think this is an overreaction to Baltimore's offense.
Yeah, I disagree. I think when I look at the Baltimore Ravens offense, I think the identity is the physicality and running the football.
Sure.
And you have a Derrick Henry for a reason. And Dan, I get it. You don't want to keep pounding your head. But I watched the Derrick Henry throughout his career. I've watched him, no matter what is in the box, have success. And you look at the wins and you look at the losses, carries per game, the numbers don't lie. People do. Right?
Okay.
So the proof is in the pudding right there. And in their 4 losses, Derrick Henry hasn't had 20-plus carries in any one of those games.
Okay, but numbers do lie sometimes because you can make numbers say whatever you want at times. I think, remember, 4 of those losses, 2 are the first 2 weeks of the season when all of us would said, well, they got to figure out how to use Derrick Henry. Last week in the Pittsburgh game, The no carries in the fourth quarter. I've heard Foxy say it all week of how that game played out. I mean, we're talking about this Ravens offense like 6 days ago. They were not on a historic pace,
right.
Not on a good pace, but a historic pace.
Yeah.
They played a divisional rival versus a top 5 defense. They're going to be okay.
Shefty.
It's why Baltimore has to get the lead. And when they're playing with the lead, they are really difficult to beat. If they fall behind early and they lose some of Derrick Henry, that's when that team becomes eminently beatable. But if they're getting the lead early, good luck trying to beat that team.
Derrick Henry averaged 5 yards a carry in that game on Sunday. So I look at it to your point. Yes, you can't continue to beat it in and just run the ball. But there is an element of that you have to do, because even though the defense has committed to the run, now when you step up and you have to play that opens up the play action, all of those things. But once you've taken Derrick Henry out of the game, you're just going to Justice Hill. When you talk about that Pittsburgh Steelers defense, when you talk about Herbig, you talk about Watt and Cam Hayward, when they know we can pin our ears back and just go after the quarterback, now it changes the element of how those guys play up front. So I do think you have to continue to run the football throughout that game.